Good day to each and everyone. I am Ms. Sherilyn Castillo of ICCT Colleges, and I am here to discuss with you implementing the rules and regulations of National Service Training Program, or Nsdp, on CWTS, or Civic Welfare Training Services Curricular Program. The CWTS is a component of Nscp. It is offered for 2 semesters as a 3-unit subject. Now, on this CWTS is a requirement for a baccalaureate degree course for both male and female. And so, this curricular program is designed to encourage the youth to further contribute, especially on the improvement of the general welfare, and so with the quality of life here in the Philippines. Now, aside from this, let me just also say that NSTP has actually or contains 3 different components. We have ROTC, or Reserve Officers Training Corps. We also have Literacy Training Services, or LTS. And again, the curricular program that we have here for you, which is Civic Welfare Training Services. So, for us to further discuss this implementing the rules and regulations of National Service Training Program, let us see what are the rules that we need to know. On rule number 1, guiding principles, what is the prime duty of the government to its citizens? So on section 1, guiding principle, it is indicated here that the prime duty of the government are to serve and to protect its citizens. And what are we going to do in return is for us to defend our state, especially the security of it. Okay? Now, aside from this, on rule number 1, guiding principles, we also have this question. How does the government recognize the role of the youth in a nation building? So, in recognition of the vital role of the youth in nation building, the state shall promote civic consciousness and shall develop their physical, moral, spiritual, intellectual, and social being. So this is under section 2, role of the youth. Now, part of this is, of course, we have to make sure that before we further contribute on the nation building, we have to make sure to ourselves that we are fully developed physically, morally, spiritually, intellectually, and of course, you as part of this society. Next, we have this one. As the most valuable resource of the nation, they shall be motivated, trained, organized, and involved in military, literacy, civic welfare programs, and other similar endeavors in the service of the nation. That's why here on the NSTP, as what I have told you earlier, we have 3 components offered here. ROTC is for the military services, okay, or programs that we may do to our country. So we have literacy, so that is under the LTS, or Literacy Training Services. And lastly, we have civic welfare programs, and which talks about the civic welfare training services. Of course, again, we have to make sure that we are going to further contribute on the nation building, as what Jose Rizal said, kabataan ang pag-asa ng bayan. Now, let's proceed on rule number 2, definition of terms. So on section number 3, as used in this implementing rules and regulations, or IRR, the following terms shall mean. So we have to further dig in to what are the definition of terms we use here in implementing the said rules and regulations. So for the first one, we have National Service Training Program, or Nscp. So this program is aimed at enhancing civic consciousness and defense preparedness in the youth by developing the ethics of the three program components. Of course, specifically designed to enhance the youth's active contribution to the general welfare. And to add this, okay, this National Service Training Program is on the Section 12 of the Republic Act 9163 and Act of 2001. So guys, please remember on what section and on what Republic Act this National Service Training Program belongs to, okay? So again, on this National Service Training Program, we offer three different components, and these three different components play a vital role specifically on how we are going to develop and how we are going to enhance the community that we are living in, okay? So next to this, speaking of the components, we have first Reserve Officers Training Corps, or ROTC. So this refers to the program component in which it has been institutionalized under Section 38 and 39 of the Republic Act number 7077. This is designed to provide military training to tertiary levels, especially for them to get motivated, trained, even organized, and mobilized for the national defense preparedness. Again, Reserve Officers Training Corps is for the national defense preparedness. And so that's the reason why we offer here military training services for those tertiary level students. Now, if ROTC is designed for us to have a national or for us to become nationally prepared when it comes to defense, let's have LTS, or Literacy Training Service. So this Literacy Training Service is a program component designed to train the students to teach literacy and even numeracy skills for those school children, okay? And especially for those who are out of school youth, okay? And most of all, those other segments of our society which are considerably in need of their services or of our services. So on here, guys, especially on the LTS, we are going to offer education for free. We are going to help the young ones to develop their knowledge by teaching them the simple ABCs, and so with by simply counting numbers, okay? Because again, as what we have said earlier, one of the roles of the youth here is they are our hope. And so how are we going to further contribute on that is by teaching them, okay? Remember, the only thing that they cannot get from us is our education. So make sure that you are going to also help out those students, let's say, or those young ones to get developed, especially on education. Now, let's go further and discuss what about now with CWTS, or Civic Welfare Training Services. So this program refers to the program component of activities contributory to the general welfare and betterment of life for the members of the community or the enhancement of their facilities. So Civic Welfare Training Services, or CWTS, of course, talks about now on how you're going to better improve the community that you are living in, whether it is through safety, through education, through environment, okay, and the rest. And so you are going to offer services here such as community programs, outreach programs, even conducting seminars. For an instance, you are going to have the topic of drug addiction, let's say, and even on entrepreneurship, in which you can share your knowledge on how you're going to build a business, on how you're going to start up a business. So that is what talks about civic welfare training services. Okay? So those are for letters A to D for the definition of terms. What about now for letter E? So this letter E is a program component. So this refers to the service components of the Nsdp as defined herein. Okay, so again, those are the three components that we offer, which are ROTC, LTS, and CWTS. Now, for letter F, we have clustering. And this clustering refers to the grouping of students enrolled in the different schools taking up the same Nscp component into one group under the management and supervision of the designated school. Next to this is we also have cross-enrollment. So what does it mean? So this refers to the system of enrollment where a student is officially enrolled in an academic program of a school, but allowed to enroll in the NSCP component of another school. Okay? And what about now when it comes to non-government organization or NGO? So this refers to any private organization duly accredited by CHED or even recognized by TESDA. So usually when it comes to this NGO or non-government organization, these are the organization that you can tie up if you're going to do any outreach programs, let's say, or any community services, community programs, or even conducting seminars, because more likely this non-government organization are the ones who are knowledgeable enough, especially on the needs that we have on the different community. Okay. Now, we are already done with rule number 1, which is guiding principles, and rule number 2, which contains the definition of terms, especially on implementing the rules and regulations. So let's now further proceed with rule number 3, which talks about the program implementation. So the question here is, who are required to complete one NSCP component of their choice as a graduation requirement? So on section 4, this states the coverage, okay? So on letter A, all incoming freshman students, whether male or female, starting the school year 2002 to 2003, enrolled in any baccalaureate and in at least 2-year technical, vocational, or associate courses are required to complete one NSCP component of their choice as a graduation requirement. So meaning to say, there is no exemption when it comes to LTS or CWTS, okay? So you are required to take this as a graduation requirement, whether you are a male or female. Again, there's no exemption on this, only for CWTS or LTS programs. Now, aside from this, okay, on letter B, it states here that all higher and technical vocational educational institutions must offer at least one of the NSTP components, okay? And on letter C, state universities and colleges shall offer the ROTC component and at least one other NSCP component. So again, you must be aware of that in every state universities and colleges, they must offer ROTC component and at least LTS, okay, or CWTS, okay? So again, those are for this coverage. What about now for the next one? So on letter D, the Philippine Military Academy or PMA, Philippine Merchant Marine Academy or PMMA, Philippine National Police Academy or PNPA, and other state university colleges of similar nature, in view of the special character of this constitution, are exempted from the NSCP. Okay, so again, if the said academies are your school, or if you are part of this academy, you are exempted from the said program, which is the National Service Training Program, because in nature, they are just in similar, meaning to say, what you're going to learn from NSTP are just the same or are just similar on what they're going to offer on the said academies. So you should be aware of that. Now, aside from this, on letter E, private higher and technical vocational education institutions with at least 350 student cadets may offer the ROTC component and consequently establish or maintain a Department of Military Science and Tactics, that's DMST, subject to the existing rules and regulations of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. So to further discuss this with you, what now? Okay, what is the legal basis of the National Service Training Program? So we must be aware of the legal basis on the National Service Training Program. So again, the National Service Training Program, or NSCP law, is also known as the RA 9163. Okay, so this is an act establishing the National Service Training Program for tertiary level students, amending for the purpose on the Republic Act number 7077, and of course the Presidential Decree number 1706, and for other purposes, was enacted last January 2002 to amend the expanded ROTC. And to add this program is aimed to enhance civic consciousness and defense preparedness in the youth by developing the ethics of service and patriotism while undergoing training in any of its three program components specifically designed to enhance the youth's active contribution to the general welfare. Now, as you can see, we have here the components of the NSTP. So on the top, we have the NSTP, and on its branches, we have CWTS, LTS, and ROTC. Okay? So still on rule number 3, program implementation, we have now section 5, program components. So on this, in letter A, it states that the NSTP shall have the following components, which the students can choose from as defined in rule number 2. So we have the Reserve Officers Training Corps, Literacy Training Services, or LTS, and of course, the Civic Welfare Training Service. So letter B, okay, all program components, the ROTC in particular, shall give emphasis on citizenship training and shall instill patriotism, moral values, respect for the rights of civilians, and adherence to the Constitution. Okay? Now, let's go further with section number 6, duration and equivalent course unit. So this is still under rule number 3, program implementation. So on letter A, each of the aforementioned Nscp components shall be undertaken for an academic period of 2 semesters. So it shall be credited for 3 units per semester. So for duration of 54 to 90 training, or to 90 days training, or 90 hours, I mean, training per semester. Okay, so on letter B, a 1 summer program in lieu of the 2 semester program may be designed or formulated and adopted by the DND, CHED, and TESDA. Okay, the Department of National Defense. We also have Commission on Higher Education, and again, TESDA. However, it will be subjected to the capability of the school and of course, the AFP to handle the same. Now, let's go with section 7, clustering and cross enrollment. So part of this rules. On rule number 2, we have said there that one of the definition of terms is the cross enrollment. So on this, we are going to further discuss it on section 7, okay? So on letter A, clustering of students from different education institutions during semester or summer periods may be done for any of the NSTP component, taking into account logistics, branch of service, and geographical locations. So the host school shall be responsible in managing the said program. Now, on letter B, schools that do not meet the required number of students to maintain the optional ROTC and any of the NSTP components or do not offer the component chosen by the students shall allow their students to cross-enroll to other schools. So please take note of that, okay? So irrespective or whether such school is under CHED or TESTA. And in the case of students taking the ROTC component, irrespective of whether the 2 semesters shall be taken from different schools or whose ROTC are administered or managed by different branches of service on the AFP or on the Armed Forces of the Philippines. So, now, students intending to cross-enroll shall be subject to the existing rules and regulations of the school of origin and, of course, accepting their school. Okay, so what about now when it comes to Section 8, monitoring and evaluation? So still we are here on rule number 3, program implementation. So we have here first management. So the school authorities shall exercise academic and administrative supervision over the design, formulation, adoption, and even implementation of the Nsdp components of their respective schools. So in case of ROTC, the school authorities and the DND or the Department of National Defense, based on the policies and regulations and programs of DND on the military component of the training, shall exercise joint supervision over its implementation. Now, schools which have contracted CHED or accredited by TESDA and even recognized by TESDA, NGOs, okay, to formulate or administer training modules for any NSTP components shall jointly exercise such academic and administrative supervision with those NGO within 45 days from approval and issuance of this implementing rules and regulations or IRR. So the CHED, TESDA, and the DND shall issue the necessary guidelines for the accreditation of the non-government organizations and of course the training modules to be utilized by these NGOs. Now, if letter A is for management, letter B is for monitoring. So for number 1, CHED regional offices, TESDA provincial, and even district offices of the DND and AFP through the major service reserve commands shall oversee and monitor the implementation of the NSTP under their respective jurisdiction to, of course, determine if the training conducted is in consonance with the Act. Okay, so these offices shall submit periodic reports to the central office of the CHED, TESDA, and the DND. Next, number 2, CHED deputized officials shall coordinate and conduct spot visits to actual NSCP activities. Okay, so come to imagine that Commission on Higher Education deputized officials shall coordinate and shall have, okay, a spot visit, especially for those who has their Nscp components and to see whether they are exercising the said activities or programs. Now, on number 3, at the end of every school year, the higher education institution shall submit an annual report to the CHED regional office copy, specially furnished, okay, the Office of Student Services in electronic template indicating the following. So we have first the names of those students who finish under each Nscp component. So next to this is the programs, projects, and even activities undertaken, of course, with pictorials and documentations as much as possible. And lastly, even financial statements on the funds collected, allocated, and utilized should have here, okay? Now, on number 4, in case of violations of the said guidelines, warnings and or sanctions may be imposed to schools and accredited NGOs that disregarded or grossly violated the provisions of these implementing rules and regulations. Next, on section number 9, this talks about fees, but it is now under rule number 4, which is fees and incentives. So on letter A, no fees shall be collected for any of the Nsdp components except for basic tuition fees, which should not be more than 50% of the charges of the school per academic unit. Next, on letter A, incentives, a program of assistance or incentives for ROTC students shall be provided and administered by DND in accordance with existing laws and regulations and as well as subject to the availability of funds. So number 2, schools authorities concerned, CHED and even TESDA shall be provided and administered by the DND in accordance with existing laws and regulations and even subject to the availability of funds. By the way, this incentives is now under section 10, incentives, insurance, and protection. Now, what else? So if letter A is for the incentives, on letter B, we have now this what we call insurance and protection. So number 1, school authorities concerned, CHED and TESDA shall ensure that health and accident group insurances are provided for students enrolled in any of the Nscp components. And aside from this, schools that already provide health and accident group insurance, the necessary fees for the purpose from their students as of effectively of this rules are deemed to have complied with these requirements. Now, on section 11, organization of Nsdp graduates. So on letter A, graduates of the non-ROTC components, which are LTS and CWTS, okay, of the Nsdp shall belong to the National Service Reserve Corps, okay, or NSRC. That could be topped by the State for Literacy and Civic Welfare Activities through the joint efforts of DND, CHED, and even TESDA in coordination with DILG, DSWG, and other concerned agencies or even associations. Next, on letter B, the CHED, TESDA, and DND in consultation with other concerned government, okay, and non-government agencies shall issue the necessary guidelines for the establishment, organization, maintenance, and even utilization of the National Service Corps. So on letter C, graduates of the ROTC program shall form part of the citizen armed force pursuant to RA 7077, subject to the requirements of the DND. Next, on Section 12, this is now on Certificate of Completion. So, Certificate of Completion with corresponding serial number issued by CHED, TESDA, or DND shall be awarded to the students who have successfully complied with the program requirements. And now on Section 13, Information Dissemination, the CHED, TESDA, and DND shall provide information on this act and even implementing the rules and regulations, okay, or IRR, to all concerned public through different modes of disseminating the said information or the needed information. So on Section 14, this is now a mandatory clause. So on letter A, Section 35 of Commonwealth Act number 1, Executive Order number 207 of 1939, Section 2 and 3 of Presidential Decree number 1706, and Sections 38 and 39 of Republic Act number 7077, as well as all laws, okay, decrees, orders, rules, and regulations, and other issuances inconsistent with the provisions of the Act are hereby deemed amended and modified accordingly. So on letter B, these rules may be amended, modified, or replaced jointly by CHED, TESDA, and DND in consultation with PASUC or PASUC, COCOPEA, NGOs, and even recognized students' organizations. So for this, on Section 15, Separability Clause. So what does it mean? If any section or provisions of this IRR shall be declared unconstitutional or invalid, the other sections or provisions not affected thereby shall remain in full force and effect. And so lastly, Section 16, we have effectivity. So these rules shall take effect 15 days after publication in the newspaper of general circulation, and of course shall remain in force and effect until revoked or amended. So on this is the end of the rules and regulations, implementing the rules and regulations that we have for Nscp under the curricular program of CWTS or Civic Welfare Training Services. So I hope that you have learned something about this day, especially on the rules and regulations that we should know as a citizen. So again, come to think about this, am I a law-abiding citizen? If I am a law-abiding citizen, I should be aware of the laws that we have here in our country. And of course, especially you as a student, you have to always remember that this law, Section 12 of Republic Act number 9163, or this National Service Training Program, an act of 2001, has different rules that we need to follow, okay? So again, I am Miss Sherlyn Castillo of ICCT Colleges, and I hope that you have learned something from me. So that's all, and goodbye.
For more ICCT Colleges video updates, please subscribe and click the notification button.